Imagine sitting on live TV, about to answer a question that could make or break your career, and instead, you deliver a response so powerful that it leaves the host speechless. This is the moment a black entrepreneur destroys the TV host's narrative, leaving America in shock and sparking a nationwide conversation about race, success, and breaking stereotypes. You don't want to miss this. In an age where media often has the power to shape public perception, certain moments can break through the noise and reveal truths that can't be ignored. One such moment occurred live on television, when a black entrepreneur, seated across from a popular TV host, delivered a response so powerful it reverberated across the nation. What was supposed to be just another routine interview quickly turned into a historical moment of defiance, clarity, and unapologetic truth, shattering the comfortable boundaries of mainstream media. The host, widely recognized for his sharp wit and often controversial takes, had prepared a line of questioning meant to rattle the entrepreneur. These weren't the kind of questions that acknowledged hard work or success. They were designed to undermine, to cast doubt on the credibility of the black entrepreneur's rise in a traditionally white-dominated industry. This is the kind of narrative many in the media had become accustomed to perpetuating, the idea that people of color are often lucky or somehow outliers, despite the dedication, talent, and persistence they display in their fields. However, the host had underestimated the power of the individual sitting across from him. The entrepreneur, with years of experience in overcoming obstacles and navigating systemic barriers, was calm and composed, fully aware that this was his chance to speak directly to the nation. He knew that this moment wasn't just for him. It was a moment to speak for the countless others who faced similar struggles but didn't have the platform to share their truth. As the tension mounted, the entrepreneur didn't flinch. With deliberate and powerful words, he would soon deliver a response that would make headlines, ignite heated debates, and spark a wave of empowerment. But what led up to this monumental moment? Let's explore how the interview began and what set the stage for this unforgettable clash. The story began in the familiar setting of a high-profile TV interview. A successful entrepreneur, now known for his impressive achievements, sat across from a well-known TV host. The stage was set, the cameras began to roll, and the conversation started with the usual pleasantries. The audience, both in the studio and at home, was eager to hear the entrepreneur's success story. After all, this was a man who had defied the odds and risen to the top of a competitive industry. But right from the beginning, there was an unmistakable shift in tone. The host, renowned for his sharp questioning style, wasn't as interested in celebrating the entrepreneur's success as he was in finding the angle that would fit the narrative he had in mind. Tell us about your journey and how you managed to climb to the top in such a competitive industry, the host asked, his voice smooth but carrying an underlying sense of skepticism. He was giving the audience what they expected, a success story. But anyone with a keen ear could hear the subtle undertones of doubt creeping in. The host wasn't just interested in how the entrepreneur had managed to thrive. He was already gearing up for the but that so often follows such compliments. It's the unspoken implication that someone from a minority background, especially in a high-stakes business environment, must have had something else, some form of luck, privilege, or an untold advantage to get ahead. At first, the entrepreneur handled the question with grace, responding as many successful individuals do in interviews, modestly and with a focus on hard work. He spoke of his humble beginnings, the challenges he had faced along the way, and the obstacles that at times seemed insurmountable. His journey wasn't one that had been handed to him. He recalled the struggles of growing up in a community that didn't have the resources or opportunities many take for granted. He shared how his passion for his business and his unwavering belief in its potential drove him to push through the setbacks that would have discouraged most others. Came from nothing, he explained, and it wasn't an easy climb. But it was my vision, my drive, and the ability to see opportunities where others saw challenges that got me here. I never allowed my circumstances to define me. It was a message of resilience, of overcoming adversity through sheer determination. His words resonated with the audience, who were captivated by the authenticity and sincerity in his story. But the host, clearly unsatisfied with this response, wasn't content to leave the conversation at that. Instead of letting the entrepreneur's hard work and perseverance shine, he shifted the tone dramatically with a question that many saw as both unnecessary and loaded. You've built a successful business, but many people say it's your race. That's helped you stand out more than your skills, the host said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. There was no mistaking the implication behind the question. It was an attempt to discredit the entrepreneur's accomplishments by framing his success as something determined not by his abilities, but by the color of his skin. It was an attempt to diminish the value of his hard-earned achievements by casting a shadow of doubt over them, suggesting that his race had played a more significant role than his actual talents. The question was jarring. It wasn't just an inquiry, it was a challenge. And it was clear that the host was not seeking an answer that would highlight the entrepreneur's skill set, but rather one that would justify the narrative he was hoping to create. In an industry where black entrepreneurs often face questions about their legitimacy, their intelligence, and their ability to lead, this moment seemed like yet another attempt to put them in a box, to reduce them to something other than what they were: successful, driven individuals. It was at this moment that the tone of the interview shifted completely. What had begun as a simple conversation about success was now taking a dangerous turn into territory where race was being weaponized to discredit the entrepreneur. The host had crossed a line, and in doing so, he had given the entrepreneur an opportunity to either cower to the question or respond with the boldness that many had been waiting for. As the interview unfolded, it became clear that this moment wasn't just about a conversation between a host and a guest. It was a confrontation, a challenge to a system that often questions the legitimacy of black success. And little did the host know, this was about to be the turning point in the interview, where the entrepreneur would take the opportunity to deliver a response that would not only change the course of the interview, but leave a lasting impact on the entire nation. The room was heavy with anticipation. The host's question had cut through the air like a sharp blade, and the tension in the studio was almost unbearable. The entrepreneur sat motionless for a split second, his gaze unwaveringly fixed on the host. It was a brief pause, but it felt like an eternity to everyone watching. His eyes told the story before his mouth even opened. They were filled with quiet strength, an unspoken determination that spoke volumes. He wasn't shaken, not even the slightest bit. He knew this moment was bigger than any interview. It was his chance to correct the narrative that had been placed upon him and countless others like him. With a calm confidence, the entrepreneur leaned forward ever so slightly, his posture as commanding as his words. The microphone picked up every syllable as he addressed the host with a directness that could not be ignored. "Let me tell you something that many people don't want to hear," he began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of truth. "My success has nothing to do with my race, and everything to do with my hard work, my vision, and my refusal to back down. It wasn't just a response. It was a declaration to the world, to anyone who had ever reduced him to just the color of his skin, to anyone who had doubted his abilities and questioned his worth." The words were simple, yet powerful, and they hung in the air, demanding attention. He continued, "People like you, media figures, are the ones who want to focus on race instead of real talent. You've made it about race, but the truth is, I'm here because I earned my place. My skills, my determination, and my resilience got me here." There was no hesitation in his voice, no fear in his tone. It was clear. He was standing firm in his truth. The shock in the room was immediate. For a moment, there was an eerie silence, as if the entire studio collectively held its breath. The host, who had spent years sharpening his skills at tearing, apart his guests, was left speechless. His usual retorts, his quick comebacks, had vanished. The tables had been turned. The entrepreneur had done more than respond. He had reclaimed the power that the host had tried to strip away with a question designed to undermine him. The audience, initially unsure of where the interview was headed, now sat at the edge of their seats. This wasn't the kind of content they had expected to see. They had come for a typical TV interview with scripted questions and rehearsed answers. But now they were witnessing a moment of raw, unfiltered truth, a moment that would go down in history. The host, usually adept at controlling the conversation, now struggled to find the right words. His expression changed from one of confidence to one of discomfort. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. His attempt to undermine the entrepreneur had failed spectacularly, and it was clear that he had underestimated the power of the man sitting before him. For those watching, the entrepreneur's response was a breath of fresh air. It was a call to action, a wake-up call for anyone who had ever allowed themselves to be defined by stereotypes, limitations, or false narratives. The truth had been laid bare. No longer would the entrepreneur be reduced to his race or the circumstances of his background. His place in the world was earned through grit, skill, and the determination to succeed. In that brief exchange, the entrepreneur had not only defended his honor, but had also delivered a message that resonated far beyond the studio walls. He had shown that success is not dictated by race, but by one's ability to rise above adversity and prove their worth through talent and hard work. The conversation had shifted. There was no going back. The message had been heard, loud and clear. This was no longer about race. It was about the value of skill, resilience, and self-belief. Within mere moments of the interview airing, the video clip of the exchange went viral, captivating audiences across the nation and beyond. The clip, raw and unfiltered, spread like wildfire on social media platforms, quickly amassing millions of views. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, no platform was left untouched by the storm of conversation that had been sparked. The entrepreneur's bold response was no longer just a clip from an interview. It became a powerful message that resonated with people from all walks of life. The statement was seen as a fearless challenge to the societal norms that had long tried to box in black individuals and reduce their worth to stereotypes about race. What started as a personal statement had evolved into a national moment of defiance. People of all backgrounds and races, not just from the black community, took to their keyboards to voice their support. Some praised the entrepreneur's poise and confidence. Others admired his unwavering commitment to truth. The clip was shared by influencers, activists, and even celebrities, all of whom championed the entrepreneur for standing up against an unjust narrative. It was no longer just an interview moment. It was a symbol of resistance. Many social media users hailed the entrepreneur's words as revolutionary, claiming that this exchange had marked a critical turning point in how media would approach conversations about race and success in the future. What had been perceived as a typical interview had been transformed into a watershed moment in American culture, one that illuminated the deep-seated issues surrounding race, inequality, and the treatment of black entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur had used the platform to push back against a narrative that often reduced the complexities of black achievement to one single factor: race. Instead, he emphasized the importance of talent, determination, and resilience. The response was so powerful that it triggered widespread discussions about media representation, the perpetuation of stereotypes, and the ongoing struggle for equality in the workplace. People began to question whether the media had been doing enough to amplify the voices of minority entrepreneurs without making race the defining characteristic of their story. For many, this moment had begun to shift the conversation from being about race first to being about merit first, creating a powerful narrative that valued the skills, hard work, and individuality of each entrepreneur, rather than reducing them to one single trait. But as with any movement that challenges the status quo, there was also a backlash. The TV host, who had been caught off guard by the entrepreneur's response, soon found himself at the center of criticism. Viewers who had initially sided with him quickly turned on him, accusing him of perpetuating outdated stereotypes and, worse, diminishing the value of the entrepreneur's achievements by questioning them in the first place. Critics argued that the host's question had been disrespectful and rooted in a systemic bias that many people of color face daily, being judged not by their skills, but by their race. As the backlash against the host grew, the media started to pay attention. His reputation began to take a hit as public opinion shifted in favor of the entrepreneur. Many saw the host's actions as part of a broader issue within the media landscape, the tendency to focus on the race of black individuals and use it as a tool for discrediting their achievements. This moment became a defining one not just for the entrepreneur, but for the TV industry as well, pushing for greater sensitivity and understanding when it came to discussing race and success. For the entrepreneur, however, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. He had emerged from the interview victorious, not just in his ability to stand up for himself, but also in his ability to transform the narrative around him. In a world that often undermines the voices of marginalized groups, his response became a blueprint for how to take control of one's own story and present it unapologetically to the world. It wasn't just about winning the interview. It was about winning the hearts and minds of those who had long been subjected to the same questions and biases. In the end, the entrepreneur didn't just conquer the interview, he set a new precedent for how people, especially people of color, should be treated in the media. His words became a rallying cry for others who had been reduced to stereotypes, reminding them that their worth was defined not by the color of their skin, but by their drive, ambition, and ability to succeed. For many, this was a masterclass in standing up for oneself and changing the narrative, one powerful response at a time. In the days that followed the explosive interview, the entrepreneur found himself at the center of a national storm, a storm not of controversy, but of awakening. His powerful response had struck a nerve across the country, igniting conversations that extended far beyond the boundaries of the original broadcast. What began as a moment of tension on a talk show had blossomed into a movement that challenged long-standing narratives about race, success, and identity in America. Almost overnight, the entrepreneur became a symbol of truth-telling in a world filled with assumptions and misrepresentation. He wasn't just celebrated for defending himself on live TV, he was praised for doing so with grace, confidence, and clarity. His phone didn't stop ringing. Invitations poured in from all corners. Podcasts, morning shows, universities, leadership, forums, and panels wanted to hear more from the man who had challenged a nationally televised stereotype and flipped it on its head. And everywhere he went, his message remained consistent. Success isn't a gift granted by society's perception. It's earned. We must stop letting others define our stories before we get the chance to write them ourselves, he said during one appearance on a popular podcast. Black entrepreneurs, Latino entrepreneurs, Asian entrepreneurs, we're more than checkboxes or quotas. We are builders, thinkers, creators, and we deserve to be seen for our ideas, not just our identities. His words inspired others. Social media became flooded with stories from other minority entrepreneurs who had experienced similar bias and erasure. But this time, the tone was different. These weren't just stories of struggle. They were stories of victory, of boldness, of reclaiming identity and celebrating success. For too long, people of color had been expected to lead with the narrative of hardship before they could speak about their wins. But the entrepreneur had shattered that pattern. Now, others were doing the same. The shift was noticeable even in how media outlets began reporting. New guidelines were proposed in several journalism circles to avoid making race the focal point unless contextually necessary. Commentators and talk show hosts began reassessing how they approached interviews with minority guests. The ripple effect was real and growing. Schools began referencing the entrepreneur's interview in communication and ethics classes. Young students were inspired. Change was happening, not just in boardrooms and newsrooms, but in the minds of the next generation. The entrepreneur also used his rising platform to start an initiative that mentored young business owners from underserved communities. He partnered with tech hubs, educational nonprofits, and leadership foundations to create access points for those who had the talent but lacked the network. For him, success wasn't just about proving his worth, it was about paving the way for others to do the same. Meanwhile, the TV host who sparked it all faced a reckoning of his own. While he didn't issue a formal apology, his network quietly adjusted their interview formats and guest preparation protocols. Internally, discussions were held about how not to repeat the mistake. Though his reputation took a hit, the incident became a lesson for many in the media. Never underestimate the impact of a confident, unapologetic voice speaking its truth. And so, what was meant to be a gotcha moment turned into a moment of transformation. The entrepreneur's story didn't end with that interview. It had just begun. He became a living reminder that when we stop letting others tell our story, we begin to write history. And that history is no longer about race alone. It's about resilience, brilliance, and the unshakable power of self-definition. What began as a simple interview became a defining moment that shifted the narrative. For entrepreneurs everywhere, the entrepreneur didn't just defend his success, he reshaped the conversation around race, talent, and identity in America. His response showed us all that no one, no matter their background, should ever be reduced to a stereotype. We all have the power to define who we are and what we achieve, and this moment will continue to inspire future generations to stand up, speak out, and unapologetically own their success. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Your support helps spread these powerful messages to even more people. Stay tuned for more and keep challenging the status quo.